Nice to be here. Unfortunately, I don't know most of you. I know some of you from last night, but maybe we can interact during the day, because if I ask you to all introduce yourself, my time will be over. So, I'm going to start. I am at a university in South Africa called University of the Western Cape. It's one of 3 universities in Cape Town in South Africa. It's what's called a historically black university. Under apartheid, you could only go to that university if you were a so-called colored person of mixed race, especially designated for that group. So it's quite a poor university. And I'm in the School of Public Health at that university. I've spent my working life in Southern Africa, in Zimbabwe, and South Africa. I come from Southern Africa. So I'm going to talk about nutrition and the right to food, and I'm going to look at nutrition and food as social determinants of health. So there are many things I could say, but I will restrict myself and we can have some discussion. So I've asked that the lights be put down so that you can see the slides from the back. That means you may sleep if you wish, but please sleep quietly. No snoring, especially in the front. Oh, now you can sleep very comfortably. So I'm going to very quickly talk about global disparities in health and nutrition, the role of undernutrition and overnutrition in health and disease, and then I'm going to focus on some of the key determinants of malnutrition. And then finally some of the current interventions which are popular, only some of them, and then some alternative approaches. So I think I will leave this on the computer, so you don't have to copy everything. So, has anyone seen these maps before, of world map? Yeah? Okay. So this depicts young child mortality, and as you can see, different countries in Africa are much larger, proportionately larger than they are in reality, so that much young child mortality is concentrated in Africa and South Asia. In fact, 50% of all young child deaths occur in sub-Saharan Africa. Although sub-Saharan Africa only has 16%, 16% of the world's population. Now obviously, Africa and South Asia to a lesser extent experience a high burden of childhood illness and mortality. If we look at the trends in under 5 deaths, and if you read UN publications, you will read about a wonderful success. And there has been a success in that in a 40-year period, you can see there's been a big reduction in young child deaths. So at the present, approximately 8 million children are dying each year. But you can see for Africa, which is these blocks, actually there's been an increase in the number of children's deaths over this period, even though the rates have fallen. How would you explain that? How can the rates fall and the numbers increase?
Increase in population.
Yeah, good. There's been an increase in population, so although the rates have fallen, numbers have increased. Of course, there's been an increase in population in Asia as well, but the rates have fallen much faster than the population increase. In Africa, they've fallen more slowly than the population increase. So, there has been a fall, but as with other health problems, there are big disparities, big differences. So this shows the differences within countries. You may not be able to read them, but from the left it's Uganda, India, Turkmenistan, Peru, and Morocco. And you can see in each of those countries, for the poorest groups, the black columns, under 5 mortality is much higher than for the richest groups, 2 to 3 times as high. So there are disparities between countries and within countries which are increasing. So if we look at the causes of death in young children, by the way, I'm speaking about young children because I started, after I qualified, I started as a pediatrician and then I moved to public health. So if you look at the causes of child death, you see that approximately 1/3 are in the newborn period, in the first month of life, especially the first week. And then there are infectious diseases of different kinds, pneumonia, diarrhea, malaria, and so on. And 35% of these under 5 deaths are associated with undernutrition. Although undernutrition does not appear as a cause of death, because usually the child dies of an infection, undernutrition is just an underlying problem which results in poor immunity. So undernutrition is a very big problem, and it's one of the things I'll speak about. But in many countries now, in a country like South Africa, where I work, in the so-called middle-income countries, there is a double burden of nutritional problems. Both underweight and an increasing problem of overweight and obesity. So I'm going to look at these because of the health problems that result. So in South Africa, we actually have a quadruple burden. In other words, 4 big groups of disease resulting in illness and death. We have the so-called pre-transitional diseases. We can talk about those later. But these include child undernutrition, infections, and maternal mortality, that is, deaths associated with pregnancy and childbirth. We have rapidly emerging chronic diseases, such as obesity and the problems associated with obesity, heart disease, diabetes, cancers, and so on. We have a huge epidemic of violence and injuries, car accidents. And, of course, as you know, we have the largest number of HIV cases of any country in the world. So South Africa has many big problems. I'm not going to speak about them today, but I'm happy to interact with people because we have these 4 epidemics which have to be tackled at the same time. So, I want to first look at the problem of underweight and stunting. Who knows what is stunting?
Short in height.
Being too short for your age. So in a normal population, 3% approximately of people are below 2 standard deviations from the median. But in many countries, many more than 3% are. So in South Africa, we find that about 1/4 of all children are stunted. Between 1/5 and 1/4. Of course, in some countries, like Tanzania, for example, 40% of children are stunted. So stunting is a reflection of chronic dietary inadequacy and frequent disease. So if you measure a population, find lots of children are stunted, then you know there is a problem of those children's diets. So even though South Africa is a middle income country, we have a big problem of stunting, and I will try and explain why. But at the same time, we have this problem. So this is a person in 1805 in UK who earned his money by people paying to see him. He was regarded as a freak, very abnormal. However, in the article from which this comes, this is no longer uncommon. In the UK, where the article was written, they say there are many people now who weigh over 300 kilograms. In fact, there are some who even weigh 500 kilograms. And possibly in Italy, there are people also who look like this. Certainly in the US and Canada, this is the case. So in South Africa, even amongst a rural population, 51% of women in the survey were overweight or obese, and associated problems like diabetes, high blood pressure were also very common. So associated with being obese or significantly overweight, we are now seeing diabetes, we are seeing heart disease, and we are seeing high blood pressure in younger and younger people. And even amongst children, in a study done a few years ago, 17% of children were overweight and 5% obese in South Africa. Obese means very significantly overweight. So I want to look at the issue of social determinants using this kind of a diagram. Moving from what we call downstream or more proximal determinants all the way upstream. So Perida was speaking about many of the upstream or structural factors that impact on health. So I will move from downstream to upstream and try and illustrate from biological through behavioral, through social to structural causes. So, if we look at undernutrition first. In South Africa, dietary factors have been studied, and we find that there's a big problem with anemia, vitamin A deficiency, zinc deficiency, and other micronutrient deficiencies. And these studies have also shown that the intake of protein in children's diets is inadequate. Study done, a community-based study of apparently healthy adults. A detailed study showed that intakes of the staple maize meal have decreased, and fruit and vegetable consumption was low, and the diet has shifted to a much more refined, processed diet. That means high unrefined carbohydrate, high-fat diseases, a diet associated with non-communicable diseases. So if we move upstream, some survey work done by some colleagues in my unit in one of the slum areas of Cape Town. This is what many people live in these conditions. They found there was a shortage of healthy low-fat food, little fresh fruit, The majority of shops sell cheap fatty foods, and the people who sell on the street similarly sell cheap fatty foods. And there is no low-fat milk available. So if you go into a supermarket in one of these poor areas, the range of foods from the stock's very different, much less than in richer areas because there is no demand, and they're also more expensive. And there are socio-cultural factors as well. This is a quote from someone interviewed who said, "I'm scared of exercising because I'll lose weight and people will then think that I have AIDS." Another person said, "People who boil food are not civilized. Fried food is attractive and tasty. If your neighbor boils food, people say she's still backward." So, unhealthy foods are associated with modernization. These days are a little out of date, but between 1995 and 1999, you can see in South Africa, also in Brazil, a doubling of the number of transactions at fast food outlets. That means Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, etc. So this is a global phenomenon. I don't know if it happens in Italy as well, but you can see Philippines, China, and so on, over a very short period of time. So if we move upstream, looking at the problem of overnutrition, we find in South Africa that the size of the market of packaged food in just a 5-year period has increased by about 40%. Very rapid expansion in the retail market for packaged food. And the value of imports from the world since 1992 of bread, pastry, cakes, biscuits has increased exponentially, as you can see. And imports of whey, which is derived from dairy and is a constant ingredient of sweet snacks. If you look on the back of the package of sweet snacks, you'll see there's whey. This is a proxy for the manufacture of sweet snacks in South Africa. You know, bars, sweet chocolate bars, and other easy snacks. You possibly can't see this very well, but this is something we published just less than 2 months ago in PLOS Medicine, which had a series called Big Food. In South Africa, the rate of increase, the rate of change of sales volume in a 5-year period from 2005 to 2010 of ready meals, 43%, of snack bars, 43%, of pasta, well, that must be Italy's influence, 35%, of noodles, 45%. So these are all markers of a very rapid change in the food environment. And which are the companies concerned? So these are the top 10 companies. 5 of them are South African, some of them being transnationals, already exporting from South Africa with subsidiaries in other countries. And 5 of them are large food transnationals like Unilever, Parmalat, which is headquartered here, Nestle, and so on. And associated with this, we have, and this is a global phenomenon, a rapid expansion of supermarkets. So supermarkets now share at least 50 to 60% of food sales in South Africa. Most of the growth having occurred in the last 20 years or so, 15 to 20 years. And even in rural areas, a study showed that 2/3 of households in rural areas are now buying their food at supermarkets. So, the transnationals and large corporations which have retail food outlets are expanding very rapidly in middle-income countries. So you can see that the growth in supermarket food sales in Japan is about 5%. In South Africa, it's gone up 32% in the recent few years. And healthy foods are very much more expensive than processed foods. Healthier foods, in a study which was done in South Africa a few years ago, healthier foods typically cost between 10 and 60% more on a weight basis, and between 30 and 110% more when compared on the basis of the cost of food energy. So poor people are behaving quite rationally. They are purchasing unhealthy foods, because unhealthy foods are cheaper. They also don't require refrigeration, and many people don't have fridges, and they don't require cooking, and electricity is very expensive. So although the post-democracy government in South Africa has electrified many houses, if you look in more detail, most people do not use the electricity for cooking, only for lighting. Because if you use electricity for cooking, it's much more expensive. So, to go to the global level. So the global food industry is a chain that extends from the growers of food through processing, distribution, all the way to retail. And there's increasing concentration of this chain. So fewer and fewer companies dominate most or some of this chain. And the leading food and beverage companies worldwide are the ones indicated here. I apologize to the Italians, Parmalat doesn't feature in the top view. But, Nestle, Unilever, Cargill, Kraft, etc. And you can see that some of them, like Unilever, for example, is involved in food products, but also in some non-food products. And their reach is very large. So you can see Nestle, for example, which is the largest, is involved in about 150 countries and contains within it about 18 to 20 different food categories. So these are enormous companies. And in fact, a company like Nestle has an annual turnover which is significantly bigger than even the GDP of some middle-income countries. So transnationals, of course, and I'm not sure that Terida mentioned that, but transnationals are behind the World Trade Organization's inception. So, for example, the GATS agreements were driven by the US medical insurance and other businesses. So, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food said the global food system is causing a public health disaster. More than 1.3 billion people around the world are overweight or obese. So this is a problem, obviously, in rich countries. That's an increasing problem in poor countries. And it is not just the rich in poor countries. In fact, this problem is developing most rapidly amongst the poor in countries where small-scale agriculture has been either destroyed or undermined, like in South Africa because of previous land policies. So let me just stop there. Are there any questions so far? Is it clear? Okay, I'll assume it's clear or very confusing. Okay.
So, for example, the children in South Africa, most of those who are undernutrited are in undernutrition because they just eat high fat things. Or is there, like, I can't really imagine, like, how many percent are there overweight because there's too much food, how many are in undernutrition because there's too much food.
Okay. So, why is there stunting when you also have obesity? Sometimes you have that in the same family. How do you explain that? Well, the diet that is resulting in overweight and obesity is also very poor quality. So it lacks many micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and so on. And generally it tends to be quite low in protein. So it has calories, it has obviously salt, it has some fats, which provide calories, but its quality is very poor. So this is how you can explain that in the same family you could have a stunted child and an overweight mother, for example. It's not that the mother's stealing the child's food, they're both living on a poor diet. There's also now a probable biological connection called the Barker hypothesis. There's someone, a physiologist in the UK, David Barker, has described a kind of a syndrome